Hello and welcome to part 40. Just wanted to say I'm not down on other nations in this segment. On the contrary, I'm trying to help rather than harm. I may shed some light on some things that maybe you knew or didn't know. Again, I'm pro-democracy, meaning believe in the system of the people governing. Maybe not to the extent where every issue is run by the people, but there are representatives representing the people. And for the people, by the people, they get a say, and the representatives hear them out, and those that they elect do a good job on their behalf. Is a good sound system. Of course, there's more to it than that. Three branches of government, checks and balances, a House and Senate, in the Congress. We can talk about the executive, legislative, and judicial branches being the three branches with checks and balances. I was thinking of the UN the other day and how there was one member of the Security Council that vetoed everything, and I just thought there must be a way they can do this, because in American government it needs to be ratified by a 2/3 vote. Now, maybe 2/3 isn't right, maybe it needs to be 4/5 or something like that. I have no idea, I'm just throwing these numbers out. But perhaps there needs to be some sort of system where not everyone has to unanimously vote. I mean, it'd be nice if everyone was unanimously agreed, but it doesn't always happen, and I can explain maybe why we have problems like this. Some governments just aren't, not that the people are bad, and this is where I'm not bashing countries or anything like that, or people. I believe the people are, anywhere in the world, people are basically good and they mean well and all that. The only question I have is that do they have the right form of government? And I think that even England, for example, may not have the right system of government with the Parliament and House of Lords, House of Commons, Tories, and all of this system. It may suit them, and I understand how it may work, that there's sort of a parallel. Behind the scenes, the royals are working and they're doing a great job. Maybe they're doing, humanitarian work, and that's good. And then you have up front the Prime Minister and the Parliament. It's fairly close to American democracy. It's just not quite what I had envisioned as ideal. I'm not bashing anyone or anything like that. I do have questions when one conglomerate, or the United Kingdom, i.e. Ireland, England, and Scotland, all decide to abstain from the EU. What purpose would that serve, other than maybe they don't have to acknowledge refugees or something that, or maybe they feel they're paying too much. If that's the case, that can be worked out, I believe. If they truly are paying too much, then there can be balances, and maybe the World Bank could help or something like that, because the EU is a great institution. It's not as close-knit as, say, the United States of America. It shouldn't be, because these are individual nations, as the U.S. is an individual nation, and although it's much more loose-knit, and they can be sovereign, and I think it's a great thing. And then also act as one and do many great things. So the EU, the European Union, that is a great thing. Why they're leaving, I don't fully know. I I don't mean to point fingers or anything like that. That's not my intent. But Great Britain may be great, but it should also be on equal footing with the rest of Europe. So maybe that's where the misconception happens on present-day Earth, that somehow they are different than the rest of Europe, and I don't think so different. I really don't. I mean, I'm all three ethnicities as far as I know, and believe in it. I like being those ethnicities, but at the same time, I realize that they need to be on equal footing with the rest of Europe, and so very important to set a good example. The EU acting unanimously or on more than one lateral dimension, multilateral, using all of the nations of Europe and coming to a consensus, albeit some may not agree. The majority may rule or something like that. The majority can, on occasion, be wrong, but a well-informed decision, and if we've made the good, well, again, each government therein of Europe should be right. And again, I defer you back to the U.S. Constitution and how that all works. I know, like, I'm spreading my own government around or something like that, like pro-democracy a little too much or something, but it really does work. I don't really understand why I know modern-day socialism is very different than what it used to be. They don't mean it the same way. I almost think they should call it new socialism. But old socialism, like say we have in China, for example, doesn't work as well as it may appear, is a theory. I've been told that, albeit China looks very well, we borrowed some money from them, the U.S., and they look bold and big and flashy and whatnot, but there is poverty there in many places, and so not all the people are reaping the benefits of their government. And it's been suggested that they, in fact, cook their books, meaning they make things look better. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm trying to help make things look better than they really are. In China, I have an affinity for China. I care. I've always felt this way. I was cultured a long time ago on Chinatown. I remember being not so far from where I lived as a boy. Haven't lived there in a long time, but I understand the culture a little bit. And communism it really is sort of a dirty word in our vocabulary. Not for reasons you might think, because it's an adversarial relationship we've had through the years, but for the benefit of those that would partake in, there's a bug behind me, sorry, it's Florida, it happens, but not because we are adversaries, that's not it, it's because we care, if that makes any sense, at least that's my take on it. Others may take a different view and see them as the enemy a long time ago because they're communist or something. It does pose a threat when communism is still in the world because we don't want others to think that communism is the solution. Socialism destroys initiative is one premise. If you have, say, two workers go out in the field and you're going to pay them the same amount for the day's work, and one does moderate work, not really motivated by money because they're going to get paid the same amount no matter what they do, and the other worker can sit on their tuckus or their bottom in the field and do nothing the whole day, or not work as well, not be a prolific worker, then you start to see where it doesn't work so well, and the other worker that was doing work also sits on their behind and does nothing. And I know it's based on nationalism, and nationalism can work to an extent, but the real incentive is the dollar. And I went through this before in another segment, how we find that people need money just to survive, and then above and beyond that, they need money too. I think that there's a certain amount of wants that are required in life that are also a need. So money is a great incentive, and they have to support a family maybe, or support themselves, or want a certain kind of dwelling or something like that, clothing, transportation, paying bills, food. Then there are utilities or whatever that may need to be paid. So money is the great incentive. I know it sounds sort of cynical that money makes the world go around. Why is money so darn important? Because we care about people. We want them to be prosperous. So the dollar bill for us, or the yen, or wherever you may be, the ruble, money does matter. It makes the world go around, as I was saying. Not to be facetious, I'm just saying that it really does motivate people to work, and I digress a little bit here. So that's why I have a problem with how Russia used to be communist, and I went through why capitalism works. I don't want to repeat myself. You can see another segment on that if you look up capitalism on this J.T. Burton channel. You can find out a little more about capitalism, how it works. I've had a great many jobs, and some people say, well, if you've had many jobs, you must not do well at them because you haven't worked a long time. I've worked, maybe 2-3 years at certain jobs or something like that, but I always found the need to do something else, if that makes any sense, keep moving. And then a theme was working in different capacities, production work for film and television. I worked in doing a variety of different things, working for more than one production company, and I thought it was a dream job at the time, being so young, being right out of high school, getting a chance to do that. Of course, it was probably more who I knew than what I knew, but I did know something of it, having training in high school on cable television, and having live shows and whatnot, and good teachers. We learned a thing or two about video, and we'd make our own films in high school, and so I was just fortunate enough to get into the industry at an early age. Some people in the industry looked at me and said, it's not fair. I went to film school for 4 years, and here you are doing that. How is that possible? How could you know what I know? And they were right. There were a few things that I probably should have known before getting into the job I had. But after a little time, I seemed to find my niche. and it was mainly, it could have been a full-time job, throughout the year possibly, but going to college was important, so it was just a summer job and holidays, and then I went to school for academics primarily, and then majored in film, and then went on to film and television at a much better film school. So there was a progression there, despite a strike at one of my schools, and we can get into why something like that could happen. Frivolous spending is not good. An administration that has run amok, maybe using it for selfish means or something like that could lead to something like that. I don't know exactly why the administration held out on the faculty there. I never quite understood that. I should probably go back and take a look, and maybe I can share that with you, what happened. But I got my first C+ in grade, and that was difficult for me. It was a substitute teacher, not possibly an accredited teacher, although it may have been. And I wasn't doing as well. So my grades, I was in a scholarship committee, a scholarship society, and you needed certain grades to maintain that, to continue to get the scholarship. And I was fortunate that I had done well in school. I didn't do the best. I remember I had a girlfriend, I had a lot of films to work on because they made me popular because I had done a number of film-like or video-like TV shows and whatnot that summer, so I had experience. So some of the seniors would use me, some of the other students would use me in that capacity, doing things that I already knew, albeit there were a lot of other freshmen that were doing the same thing. I digress a little bit here, but was very busy doing that, and let me take pause. But so I probably couldn't do my best, is I guess the point of all that. I was doing a lot of things freshman year, and then along came the strike the second year, the beginning of the second year, and I know it doesn't sound good. U.S. should be doing better, but there are reasons for everything under the sun. So I chose to run the campus movie theater, thinking these students need something to do, keep their interests, keep them going out, doing things, because we had classes for 1 month. We had no classes at the beginning of the month. And I took it upon myself to run the business. It was like owning the business, albeit it belonged to the university. But I was in charge more than just a manager. I had an assistant, which was very helpful. But I made the phone calls, and I did the wheeling and dealing. What I did is I bid to television companies against each other. That was my plan. They both wanted us to. Now, in the long term, this may not have worked so well, but they wanted our business fully. Like, they wanted to be our one and only company we used, and I split it in half. I did half the movies from one company, half the movies from another. And in doing so, dealing with two different companies, they had different films, and I could say, this company is giving me this to the other company, and they'd say, well, we'll give you that, plus we'll give you something else in addition to. And it just worked out ideally for me. They offered me the best of both worlds as far as film went. I got the best films from one company, the best films from another. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but one of the ways I did it was I put out a form in the cafeteria to all that ate on the eating plan, which was most students, and it said I picked out just about almost all the films that were possible, or that had gotten decent reviews or something like that, or that they may or may not like, but made a long list, 2 columns of films, and then said check either yes, no, or maybe you'd like to see this film. And so it was a little misleading, perhaps, but what we did is we tallied up, my assistant and I tallied up all the yeses, the films they definitely wanted to see, and by and large, we picked those first. Those were the first films we picked. The majority picked certain films, and the yeses had it is how we went with it. Instead of saying, we didn't deal with the no's, or we didn't deal with the maybes. We just dealt with what people definitely wanted to see. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. So long story short, we wound up with some pretty good films as far as they were concerned. I got a lot of compliments for what we were seeing. And yet, by bidding each company against each other, we could bring down the cost a bit. In years past, they had paid much more money, and I managed to drive down the cost. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, I'm trying to explain capitalism a little bit more. So what happened was the student council, which I was affiliated with, I wasn't elected anything. There was a conflict of interest, possibly because I was on the student center board of directors, meaning the campus movie theater was on the student center grounds, and I was part of that board. And then to be on student council as well may have been a conflict of interest, so it was downplayed by the fact that I was just a co-senator. There was a senator at my college. I was his co, and what wound up happening is he was doing other things involved in school, and I wound up taking his place as the alternate a lot, meeting with the dean and whatnot, and finding out what was going on in the college, reporting it to the student body and the student council and whatnot. Managed to find some new classes when I found there was a video studio on campus, and thought wouldn't it be great if they could partake in learning how to do that. So I actually found 4 new courses for them. But prior to that, I believe it was, they gave me a standing ovation. I mean, it may have just been a little pat on the back for money saved, and choosing good movies and giving them something to do and whatnot. And so it had been a good year for the movie theater. Unfortunately, I could have passed the torch a little better than I did. I was very busy at the end. I was trying to help my girlfriend, and there wasn't much I could do to pass the torch. But the guy that taught me did it very well, and he taught the next generation, and perhaps they did very well. I don't know what the outcome of that was. Pardon me. But that's an example of capitalism, my experience in capitalism. I also worked in Times Square one time at a movie theater as a manager, night manager. The records probably indicate otherwise, because I did it for such a short amount of time. I learned that there was a chance that someone could bring a gun into the theater, and I thought, well, at age 22, I'm not cut out to be in charge of such a situation. Even though there was security, I didn't think that I should be the heavy, and wasn't yet mature enough for that job. So I declined to take it. Not necessarily that I was afraid. I think it was more so that I didn't know. I mean, I know, have you ever heard this expression, don't yell, please don't do this, yell fire in a crowded theater, because people can trample each other to death. Even if there is or isn't a fire, they can actually hurt and kill each other just trying to get out of the theater. So it's unwise. Please do not do that. And I know that someone's going to think maybe I should try that or something. Please don't. I warn against it. Consequences for our actions, not good sometimes. I digress again. But I also believed in, when I was in high school senior year, one of the jobs I had was at a deli. Another one was at a supermarket department. And that seemed to be a theme after the film production went away. I did a lot of supermarket work, being familiar with it, and one of the reasons was to learn more about food and shopping and cooking and whatnot, and how to go about doing this living on my own. So in early years I thought I'd learn about food and supermarket and how to maintain a household with food, and later cooked for my family, but I digress a little bit again. But I found that learning was happening a lot at working at a supermarket. That was only one job I had, but it was at various different capacities: dairy, seafood, dairy again, stocking shelves, cashier. I moved around quite a bit. I worked in the deli section one time. And in doing this, I picked up a lot of skills, and then there were other jobs, a pharmacy for one, a gas station or service station. I'm trying to think. I did landscaping. I did a lot of different jobs that seemed to help me learn more about the work ethic and how things worked. I even, at one point when I was very young, sold comic books at a convention and did fairly well. I mean, I played it like the stock market and invested in certain comic books, buying more than one on occasion, and selling them, renting a booth and selling them. I had easels and things for the comic books, and they were very receptive to me. I mean, one guy called me his best friend for having the comic book he had so sought for. I mean, he was just kidding, but it was a fun experience, and albeit brief, but I did that for a term. But I'm trying to give you an overview. I worked at a school. I did well there. Mr. Straightlaced, trying to set a good example for the younger students, and principal said I was good with the kids. I got offered a sizable amount of money to work as a teacher's assistant, and it would have meant a delay getting all my records together and whatnot. And there's some things in my past that I don't want to talk about right now. Eventually I'll probably talk about it. But, so I wasn't able to do everything I wanted to do. I mean, I may have wanted to play Batman, but never was quite big enough for the hero roles and whatnot. I took acting sometimes in school, even at a good film school, and yet I was not always good at memorizing lines, but I had problems with money at times. But I digress. In retrospect, I could have done much better. But I know it sounds like it's not an ideal life. It may explain why I wasn't such a success in life, working bottom of the rung jobs. But I think it was just all about learning about the system of government and different jobs we had. And it was a great learning experience, my work history. I can't talk about what else I'm doing now because that would be like selling you on something else I do, so I won't talk about what I do for making money, albeit not much. But I keep working on things to try and make money. I'd like to even possibly make money doing this, but I don't know if I can. And I may not be good enough for it or whatnot. I may run of the mouth a little too much. I'm starting to realize maybe I'm doing that right now. But I had, if I didn't do as well as I could have at certain jobs, it may have been because I was working too much. I worked 3 jobs at one time to save up money to get back to school. I worked 80-hour work weeks one time. That's just ridiculous. No one should have to do that. I think, even if it's an easier job, it's not good. I was trying to get back to school and save up enough and get into school. It was a very expensive school. And, I had hoped to do on merit, to do well and then get scholarship money as I had. That's what I was trying to explain before, is that my freshman year I did very well, and I happened to fall short of the mark of the best in my college. But so was number 2, and number 1 went off to another school, and so I got all his scholarship money and grants and whatnot. And, maybe it was unfair, I don't know, but in any event, I got nearly a full scholarship that year. So it does pay to do well in school, yet you may need a job. Most times you need a job. I still was working. I was a building manager, and I was selling tickets to the theater there at school. So I had real paying jobs there besides running the campus movie theater. And so it's all good. A little bit of work. Set aside some time. I had a full schedule and didn't have time for much work. I could work one day a week, and didn't do as well as I could have. New York City was very expensive. What I found, my tastes were getting more expensive. And, in retrospect, I know better since I've worked in supermarkets and whatnot what to buy to save money. So that was sort of the idea behind working at supermarkets and learning a thing or two about how to save money buying food. Eating out can actually save you money. Like dollar menu from something, if it's healthy enough. Healthy eating is important. Okay, I digress. But more on other governments. I can't stress enough that communism doesn't work, socialism doesn't work. I'm not maybe speaking of this new socialism. I don't quite understand it. I'm told Bernie Sanders was going to do this, but with American know-how, and I believed that there was somehow, it was just sort of democratic capitalism with a social